Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our continuing COVID adventure and doing celebrations and meetings by Zoom. I'm John Salveson. I'm the chair of the Regional Board of United Way of Greater Philadelphia and Southern New Jersey, and I'm really, really happy to see so many people joining us here this evening. We are here for a couple of reasons. We're here to celebrate, and we're here to give you a preview about, as you know, we're celebrating our 100th anniversary in 2021 and 2022. And that's 100 years of really an enormous amount of impact in neighborhoods, in people's lives, and basically supporting the well-being of everyone those people who need it most. So this evening, we're going to be joined by some of our most generous supporters and some of our most long-standing supporters, some of whom I've seen already here on the video. We've got people from our Distinguished Directors Group, people from our Needle Movers, people from our Sustainer Circle, and many, many more. But no matter who you are or why you're here, I really do welcome you, and I thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, we're going to hear from two of the people at our United Way who really spend a lot of time facing the community and really understanding in great detail and depth the work that you all support. So we thought it would be really valuable to get to know them a little and learn from them a little bit about, a little more detail about what we do. We're going to hear from Sanjaya Fitzgerald. She's United Way's Chief Planning and Systems Officer, and then Kate Houston, who is United Way's Chief Impact Officer. We're also going to hear from Bill Golderer, who's going to talk about the plans for the upcoming 100th anniversary celebration and give us some sneak peeks into some things that are going to be happening. So before we get started with Sanjaya and Kate, however, we're going to share a quick video with everybody that we think sums up the importance of United Way now, really now more than ever. So let's enjoy the video.
For over 100 years, we've worked to advance the greater good across our communities. No matter the obstacle, no matter the odds, our mission to end poverty and expand opportunity continues to drive us each and every day, because we know that change doesn't happen overnight, and poverty isn't something we can simply ignore. So we fight as a force, united, because we are stronger together. Forging strategic partnerships, mobilizing across sectors, and leading research to deliver scalable solutions, all for the opportunity of more children reading at grade level, more people growing their financial assets, more families buying their first homes. Thanks to you, our community partners, corporate supporters, and donors, we've made great progress, but we're not done yet. Poverty still looms as our region's biggest challenge. And as we emerge from the pandemic that upended our lives, we look towards a brighter future. It's time to recommit to the mission. It's time to build on the success of our first 100 years as we look to the next. It's time we live united. Join us, and together we can make an impact.
Great. Thank you very much. That was quite a presentation. Okay, Sanjaya and Kate, we're going to put you on the hot seat now. Let's start. Sanjaya, we're going to start with you. And let me just tell you a little more. I just mentioned earlier, Sanjaya is our Chief Planning and Systems Officer. She's been a member of the United Way team for 14 years, which is quite a long period of time. And Sanjaya played a big role in the 2017 efforts to refocus our mission on intergenerational poverty, which I would argue is probably one of the most significant things we've done in our United Way in decades. So great work there. Before she joined United Way, Sanjaya served as a couple of professional roles in the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and in the United States Department of Health's Office of Inspector General. So, Sanjaya, let me just start with this. What brought you into this work?
Thanks, John. I think I really didn't have much of a choice. So I was born and raised in Camden, New Jersey, and I come from a long line of public servants. So I really had a front row seat to see the impacts of poverty, both on individuals and communities, but also to see people actively every day fighting against poverty. So that, coupled with my just love for operations and implementation and change at scale, United Way really was like a perfect fit for me. And coincidentally, as I was packing up my house recently for some renovations, I found a paper that I had written back in grad school, and it was about my career trajectory. And I mentioned United Way as a place that I thought would be amazing as a fit for what I wanted to do professionally, but also aligned perfectly with my values. So, fast forward a few years later, and here I am.
Wow. You called it. You really got it right.
Yeah,
Kate,
a fluke, I don't know.
I don't know if it's a fluke. Kate, I'm going to ask you the same question, but first, let me just speak a little bit about your background. As I mentioned earlier, you are our Chief Impact Officer. Prior to being in this role, you were our Managing Director of Capacity Building. And you've also spent some time professionally working in the Barra Foundation and the Sustainable Business Network of Greater Philadelphia. So both of you really have had careers completely dedicated to mission-driven work. What brought you to this work, Kate?
Sanjay and I have a lot in common, including both having gone to NYU for our master's programs. But one thing we do not have in common is my teenage self would never have believed that I would follow in my parents' footsteps. But I too grew up in a house with two public servants, federal, state, and local governments. Dinner conversation was usually work-related, anything from public transportation, affordable housing, Medicaid, childcare access. My parents had an enormous influence on me. My mom, I remember vividly when I was about 13 years old, my mom had been at an overnight work-related trip. And when she returned, I, of course, said, where did you stay last night? And she said, my team is making some really important decisions about state hospitals for people with severe mental illness. And I spent the night, my team and I spent the night at one of the hospitals last night. You can imagine my 13-year-old mind, that seemed unfathomable. But they were practicing proximity. She knew that the decisions she was going to make, she couldn't replicate their experience, but she wanted to get as close as she could, literally, to understanding their lived experience. And stories like those, eventually my graduate studies intersected, and I knew I wanted to be on this path. But I probably learned just as much around the dinner table as I did in all my years of school.
That's great. So Jay, back to you. You've got the longest tenure on the leadership team. So I think you probably have maybe a little more perspective, at least about United Way and where it's been and where it's going. Particularly as we've spent so much time and energy shifting our business model and our strategy to just respond to a changing world. What do you see as our United Way's most significant transformations over the years that you've been part of the organization?
Yeah, John, you mentioned one earlier, which was in 2017, the stake in the ground that we were willing to make regarding being a poverty fighting organization. For pretty much the entirety of United Way's history, we had been an organization that tried to be all things to all people. And while that's noble, it really does dilute the impact. So the fact that we were willing to put that stake in the ground was hugely transformational. And I think the other place is right now, the fact that we are willing to be loud and proud and boldly go into places you wouldn't traditionally expect to see a United Way. Examples of that are the Entrepreneurs of Color initiative, the work that we're supporting regarding pardons and expungements. They're not places you expect to see United Way, but we're there and we're supporting. And those things that make some people uncomfortable, and that's okay. Being uncomfortable leads to growth, and that's what we're all striving for. We want growth in our organization, in the communities that we serve, and as much as we can, maybe we can come up with some interventions and preventions that are scalable and are examples for other parts of our region, the country, and the world potentially. So those things feel like the two most pivotal transformations that I can think of over the years.
Right. Kate, you really led our work last year on the PHL COVID-19 Fund, arguably another example of how our United Way is so different than it was 5 years ago. That fund raised and deployed over $18.5 million, distributed it to over 600 organizations in the first months of the pandemic. Would you just talk a little bit about some of the salient lessons from that experience from your point of view?
Thanks, John. I will, and I'm just moving my my little pointer here so I can be sure to see everyone's faces. Just off notes here, want to say thank you to this group of donors. It's the ongoing support of United Way that makes it possible for us to respond in a crisis like that, to stand up that kind of an answer to our community's urgent needs. It really is made possible by your support. I hope all of you know that in this really dark season, that your contributions were hard at work. And from me personally, in those early months, I know we all remember how vividly helpless we all felt. And I was so grateful to have a meaningful way. I know Sunji and I share this feeling, a meaningful way to help our neighbors in such a difficult time. So sorry, I do also have two salient lessons, but wanted to say thanks first. So the one is about collaboration. And when I joined United Way, I'd come from a private foundation, and I had seen time and time again, when we wanted to do something big together, the regional philanthropies, we often had a lot of excuses. Board hesitation, mission misalignment, just overall complexity, maybe leadership personalities. There are always reasons that were holding us back from working together. And I think when COVID hit, all of that was just out the window. We assembled a credible board of directors, we put a team together. We were lockstep focused on what we needed to achieve together. And I hope that sense of potential for collaboration is something that lives on well beyond the pandemic. And I think this group would agree, poverty is a pandemic. When this is all in our rearview mirror, I hope we treat poverty with the same level of urgency that we've treated COVID-19. And the second lesson is really about outreach. And I think we really learned some important lessons here. When we have a new resource, whether it's a grant opportunity or a COVID test, internet access, or then a vaccination, if we build it, they will come as a fallacy. Where we weren't doing outreach work, we weren't effective. So in our field, we've unfortunately assumed, like, if we put out a press release and we put it on social media, everybody's going to line up for this new resource. Grant makers and donors generally don't want to include the cost of outreach in budgets. I understand it feels a little bit like marketing, but when everyone's health was interconnected by a global pandemic, we saw that we really needed to build networks in advance, build trust in advance, and address the barriers, that's very real barriers that stood in people's way, whether that was transportation, internet access, language barriers. So the other lesson I hope we'll take with us is just that, build the relationships before we need them. We need that trust in community so that whatever the issue is that's affecting us all, we're able to rally community around solutions.
That's great. This next question is really for both of you. I know you're both very busy working on our next multi-year grant cycle. This is a structure we've used for many years. But as the organization, as we change our approach and as we evolve as an organization, I wonder, could you share any ways that we're approaching that work maybe a little differently than we have in the past?
I'll start that one. So if I could sum it up in one word, it's going to be community. I think we don't plan to radically change the foundation that our board laid with our investment strategy in 2017, but we also acknowledge that a lot has changed internally and externally. So we're in the midst of a strategy refresh, and the keystone of that refresh is going to be a community engagement process. And I know historically we've sometimes used nonprofit leaders as a proxy for community listening, and I think they're really important to our strategy. But this process is about, the pastor in Pottstown, the block captain in Chester, that beloved teacher in Camden, maybe one of Sanjia's teachers. We want to make sure that the issues that are bubbling up for the people who live in the communities we serve, that we are really focused on those issues and on their needs. It's just one step, the process of that in community engagement, but we're also thinking about other ways we can embed community-informed practice and really valuing the lived experience of people in our work. So for example, the Impact Strategy Committee of our board of directors just rewrote their charter. They have a renewed purpose. They have new goals for membership to make sure that we have members of community represented on our Impact Strategy Committee and that they're helping to guide our work going forward. Sanjia?
The one thing I would add is more from an operational perspective, but we as United Way and we as a funder community have gotten a lot of feedback on the burden that is placed on applicants, on partners, and we are actively working against that. So we're having conversations internally and we're asking ourselves to distinguish what is nice to have versus what is necessary to have. And we're really coming down with streamlining the processes and looking more toward relationships, as Kate said, less so than, what people have candidly said about United Way. We're not in an ivory tower. We are here to build relationships. Whether funding is a part of that relationship or not is of less consequence, but we want to build partnerships. We want to be seen as a partner in this work. And I think that is just vitally important and something that you probably won't hear publicly, but is something that we're really proud of.
Is that, Sanjay, is that something that you would put in the broad category of trust-based philanthropy? Is that?
It
correct?
is, yes. It's one of the core tenets of trust-based philanthropy, and we're really excited to implement it.
Could you just talk a little bit more about trust-based philanthropy, what that is and what that means?
Sure. It is looking as funders, looking at our partners as partners and not as sort of just entities, right? There has historically been an almost power dynamic, right, between funders and organizations seeking funding. And so it is pushing all of us to look from a place of positivity and not oh, well, you need to jump through all of these hoops to prove your worthiness to us. There are amazing organizations, and many of them we've had long-standing relationships, again, funded or not. And we know that they're doing really great work. So let's trust them in that work and support that work instead of coming up with arbitrary standards that don't really show the impact of the work, don't really allow organizations to shine and to be creative and innovative. There had just been a lot of boxes around funding. So trust-based philanthropy really looks to sort of blow that dynamic up and again, make it more about partnership instead of funder versus funding.
Maybe stated a slightly different way, it gives them the opportunity to actually use the funds that we give them to help the people that need help rather than managing us. That's probably a little overstated, but that's the idea. It's another way to get more of those resources directly into the communities.
It is, and you make a good point. We have heard a lot from partners. The amount of time that it takes to complete a funding application or
Mhm.
to submit a final report really isn't the best use of anyone's time. Really, the fundees and also us, we'd much rather be working towards solutions and coming up with what can help our community, not checking boxes. And a lot of the
Right.
sort of old thinking in philanthropy was much more about checking boxes than impact.
Great. One last question for the two of you. Tell us something that makes you feel hopeful about the future.
Okay, I would love to start this one. I feel really hopeful based on the team we have. I am surrounded with some of the most amazing, intelligent, thoughtful, passionate people. And it really doesn't matter where you look across the organization. We are people that are not okay with the status quo. We recognize the need for change in our community, and we're all willing to do our part in, again, any part of the organization because we know it's toward the greater good. So that for me is like, I don't know how much more hopeful I can be personally, other than, working with such amazing people.
I love that, Sanjia, and mine's a little bit related. A few weeks, maybe a couple months before I started at United Way, I'm sure everyone on this call remembers the fall of 2018 was just like one bad article about poverty in our region after another. But I remember reading one, and it was kind of the ultimate Inquirer story. We were going in the wrong direction. Neighborhood disparities, racial disparities, it was worsening in our region. And it was kind of a gut punch. And I remember exactly where I was. I was on the train. I looked out the window just to kind of take in what I was reading. I felt totally hopeless. And I started asking myself, building kind of a mental list of who will address this? Like, who is going to take the lead? Who will root out what is going on here and help us, shift the tide in the right direction? And I ran through that list of elected officials and philanthropies and institutions and academic institutions. And then it just dawned on me, oh my gosh, it's United Way. This is the charge Bill Golder has been shouting from the rooftops. And then awestruck, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on that team soon. And it has been really, what makes me hopeful is just seeing that come to life, seeing a new way of assembling our assets, whether that's our relationships in the private sector, strong ties to the nonprofit community, really rallying resources. And to Sanjia's point, this incredibly talented group of people who are not only building trust with our allies in the nonprofit sector and our community members, but are also just so disciplined about understanding and investigating what issues are standing in our way. So I'm really hopeful because I can see it in RISE partnership. I can see it in PHL COVID-19 Fund. I see it in PHL Connected, and I really see it in the Promise. It just makes me feel really hopeful to see one example after another. And I've said this a million times, our mission demands it and our community deserves it. This is the way we ought to be operating. And then Sanjia and I said we wanted to end on a quote, and here's one that kind of ties together our hopefulness. It's the late great Detroit activist Grace Lee Boggs, and it's not just inspirational; it's also a challenge to all of us. She would often say, "We are the leaders we've been waiting for."
That's great. I just love that, Kate. And I will just share what makes me hopeful is people like the two of you who have such enormous talent that you could take any number of places, and you are bringing it to us at United Way. So I'm super grateful for that, and very hopeful that we can be successful and really move the needle on intergenerational poverty with people like you and our leadership team. So thank you both. Okay, if we could unmute everybody, we'd all applaud. Our next, there we go, I see some applause. My next job is to introduce Bill Golder. Bill, I can see him there on the screen. Bill is going to talk about our upcoming anniversary. Bill has led the United Way since 2017. He's been our president and CEO. His job is to kind of harness the 2018, okay, 17, 18. I do remember I had breakfast with Bill Golder probably in 2017. I invited him to breakfast at Manila's Diner. I was co-chairing the search committee for United Way for our CEO search with Mindy, who I think is on the call. And I didn't tell Bill why I wanted to have breakfast with him because I didn't think he'd come if I told him why I wanted to have breakfast with him. And we sat down and I said to him, I think you should think about being the next CEO of United Way. And he didn't say what's United Way, but he did, kind of scratch his head and say, what are you talking about? And that started a conversation about United Way and where we are and where we're going. And it was a perfect example in my mind to how even people like Bill at that point, super plugged in to our community, don't always understand where, the power of United Way and where we can take it. So he has been at the helm he's in his 4th year. He is a great representative. He does a lot of writing, op-eds. He's been a commentator on Huffington Post, CNN, the History Channel, and I think very deliberately and appropriately is becoming recognized as an intelligent, influential voice on intergenerational poverty, so that we can help position our United Way as a resource and as a solution to those problems. So, Bill, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk to us about the 100th anniversary celebration.
John, there's not enough time to thank you for what you've done, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But thank you all for joining. I can't, every time I get on a Zoom anymore and I see people there, I'm surprised because I'm guessing some of you have to spend a fair amount of time still on Zoom, and you elect in your free time to spend time with us. And I just can't thank you enough for joining us. I want to share a story and invite you to an exercise that we're going to do while I blather on a bit about what's ahead of us. It's really hard to imagine that this organization is about to celebrate a very significant milestone in the spring of 2022, which is our 100th anniversary. And I want to tell you a story, and I'm going to call him out, of a person that I can't believe I didn't know prior to joining United Way, but a person I consider a friend, one of our most ardent supporters, Lon Greenberg. There's an entity, a group called our Distinguished Directors. And, we had hoped this fall to get our United Way Distinguished Directors together in person, and with the spike in COVID cases and just anxiety, we decided that the better part of valor would be to cancel. And I just called Lon and I said, I'm really sorry about this. And I was like, this meeting means a lot to me. And he said, Bill, any of us can spend time with you pretty much anytime we want. And that's no great, treasure. Like, I can call you and we'll talk. But the reality of this is we miss each other, the people who helped to build the foundation of United Way. We deliberated in meetings. We worried about the future together. We took risks together, and we missed each other. And so, I don't see our United Way 100th anniversary celebration as an exercise in nostalgia, but rather building the connective tissue again that created this strong organization to begin with. And so the ask of you is to consider, and I don't think you want to do this, but please humor me, or humor John at least. Consider writing in the chat a favorite memory of a time spent with United Way's mission. A person you met, a meeting you attended, a welcome or unwelcome surprise that you endured. It's all part of this, because it's this foundation that we are fortunate to be positioned upon, that will launch, I believe, the most important chapter is yet to be written in our United Way's history. So consider going in the chat and writing a memory down. I just want to, before I do a couple thank yous, I want to tell you where I just was. It's Sanjia and Kate who helped us to execute on something that I think matters more than anything else. We have a group that meets very regularly called I think it's called the President's Council. These are the top leaders of community organizations that meet of their own volition together with us to help us understand what's going on in community right now. How is the Great Resignation impacting childcare right now? How is the great, the sort of the deep anxiety about returning to the workplace impacting us? How are we thinking about the opportunities to seize for our future? What are we doing? And just knowing that when United Way calls and convenes this group of leaders together, they come with excitement to learn from each other and to know that we're going to listen, knowing that we value their insight in a way that that really matters. So let me do a couple rounds of thanks. I want to thank all of you as supporters for hanging in. I would say adversity is the greatest teacher, and adversity is also revelatory as to who people are and what they're made of. And I would say that our United Way, it's such a gift to serve a mission as important and as frankly achievable as ours is. I need to thank my friend John Salveson for, when you invite him to serve as board chair, for saying yes, because the problem with that invitation is I've known John a long time and he knew what he was getting into when I asked him to. We're not in an incremental moment, and we don't need incremental moves. We need to have an appetite for risk. We need to have an appetite to say yes and have that yes mean yes and have our no mean no. When I said to John that you're going to serve on this board as chair, we need to get through our heads that social change in Philadelphia, in all senses of the term, and our broader region, is a contact sport. Meaning, if you don't like or enjoy getting punched in the face or criticized or second guessed, you probably shouldn't be engaged with disparity and access to opportunity, because this is the deep end of the pool. This is what the nation is about. Ostensibly, it's about our ability to reach a sense of well-being and achievement and a sense of peace. Having your, sorry to borrow from my other job, you have your own olive tree under which to sit and enjoy shade. That's what we're all reaching for ourselves and for our families. And if you don't think that there's something that needs to change in our communities for more people to access that possibility, you got another thing coming. You've got to have an appetite for advocacy, solidarity, and providing capital. Your reputational capital, your financial capital, your courage. But there's another definition of a contact sport, which is being in connection with people who are in the struggle. This is not an academic exercise. This is about people. And I had the great privilege prior to coming to United Way, where every day of the week, 7 days a week, I would open the widest front door in the Philadelphia region, and all manner of characters would come through there needing something, wanting something, hoping for something different than what they were currently experiencing. And now at United Way, that willingness to engage deeply with each other, it's never been more important. I was on of all things, a bank advisory call, and the person who's the regional president of that bank may or may not be on this call today. The they were talking about how the economy is changing right now. And the one person on the call was talking about the tourism sector and travel sector. And he said, you see a lot of people who've been pent up for so long, wanting to travel and see family and connect with friends and just actually enjoy themselves. And he said, so what we're seeing on our books is a season of revenge travel. What I'm inviting you all to consider is a season of where it's safe to do so, revenge connection. Connect to your United Way. Call, like, can we have lunch? Like, can you call John and tell him what a terrible job I'm doing? Will you consider how important it is that if we're going to be united and United Way, we need to embrace this idea of connection. Every good meeting has a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of information, and a little bit of gossip. So the inspiration was provided by Sanjia and Kate, and they represent the most talented and committed team of people that I've ever worked alongside. And there's more coming, and that'll be the gossip for later. There's a couple of additions that I can't wait to tell you about, but I can't yet. The information is that there are people on this call who sit at the 4 pillars of our community and across our region. People who are driving real change by providing jobs and increasing wealth through job creation as being part of companies and industries that we need to be back and working and thriving. We have individual philanthropists who have been so generous, who want to do more and learn more about what works and how we could be more effective. We have community leaders who, just seeing their names on Zoom, I work for you. Believe you me, I'm of service to your success. And government officials, when I know some folks don't like to talk about the government, but really, we have so many opportunities to seize upon public-private partnerships that could change the game if we just were willing to understand how our interests are ultimately aligned and how to build trust. So let me tell you before I jump off, I know I'm going to get, many of you are not old enough to remember Chuck Berry and the Gong Show, but I'm going to get gonged here in a minute. So let me see if I can get through this really quickly. Another pop culture reference. Some of you may remember an obscure Brady Bunch episode where Peter Brady decided to throw himself a birthday party and nobody came. That didn't sound like a good idea for United Way's commemoration of its 100th anniversary, to throw ourselves a birthday party. A better thing might be to focus on 3 things primarily. 1, those who have come before us and built the foundation upon which we stand. We are indebted to supporters who have been investing in our mission over, in some times, decades. And we need to acknowledge that contribution, because without that foundation, we're just whistling Dixie. The second is that there is, for all the challenges that we have read about, and they are huge, I believe there's a tectonic shift in our community wanting something different for our future than what we've experienced in our past. New partnerships, new opportunities to drive impact, new investment channels, a greater will and commitment to abscond ourselves from the old way, which is, somebody told me once that the Philadelphia region's way of practicing leadership is to say somebody else somewhere else should be doing something else. This is a time where more and more people are raising their hand to say, what can I do? And what am I willing to sacrifice to make a difference? And the third thing is to learn from national and global leaders about people who share our passion for a different future and bringing them to Philadelphia, where this idea of equal opportunity was born in some places, in our mind. And how do we claim that? How do we welcome people from around the world and around the country to share our commitment for this opportunity? This will all happen on the campus of Girard College. And I don't need to tell you why Girard College matters, but it's more than a symbol. It's about how organizations can evolve and change to meet their mission in ways that surprise people and delight people and change outcomes. And I'm so proud we're going to be there in person in April. And if you are able to join us, let me just give you a hint of who I know you'll be able to meet. You'll be able to connect with, I would say, at least more than 400 people from the private sector, from community organizations, committed government workers, and of course, community leaders of every stripe, as well as individual philanthropists. It will be a room that has never been assembled before, and you can't miss it. But you'll see in the room that constellation, but also leading some conversations include the 12-year mayor of Calgary. He is a former McKinsey partner who decided to run for mayor of Calgary to claim an audacious goal to say, what would it look like to reduce poverty in our community of Calgary by 20% in 8 years, a quantifiable target. He did it. He did it. And he's coming to Philadelphia to tell us how and to cheer us on. Naheed Neshi, he's a Muslim who was born in the United States and became the mayor of Calgary. He was the mayor of the world in 2016. We're also welcoming, I don't want to give all the surprises away, but I want to tell you a little bit more. We believe, and we have reason to believe, that the founder of Harvard's Opportunity Insights, the premier or entity that measures and can help us chart where there is opportunity to be claimed in our nation, where people can achieve the American dream. This is Harvard, friends. You know, I went to a school they said was the Harvard of the South. There's only one Harvard, right? It's Harvard. And he has been watching our United Way make bold choices and make bold moves. And he's coming to be with us in April to help cheer us on and embolden us in our, and these people don't know more than we know, but they are part of us. They're just neighbors that we don't know yet. And I want us to build a sense of excitement that the best is yet to come. And listen, if you will have me, I want to stick in this with you, and you're going to get mad and disappointed and frustrated. I can't promise you that you won't, because we have adopted together the most difficult mission you could possibly adopt. And yet there is nothing more important. If the last 18 months have taught us nothing, that the board of directors in 2017 that chose to adopt a mission to meaningfully and measurably reduce poverty and to expand opportunity for more children, more young people, more adults, and help them create stability and well-being and wealth, there's nothing more important. And so it's my privilege to welcome you to this 100th anniversary season. And I'm just going to invite you to do some revenge connecting. Don't, I see the Zoom sometimes and I go, oh God, another Zoom. So maybe pick up the phone, maybe have lunch outside, make time for breakfast, make time to be in touch with your friends from United Way. I'm grateful to all of you. Thanks for letting me talk over time by 2 minutes.
I think you did pretty well. The over-under on how long you'd talk over was 10 minutes. So there's probably some people who owe other people some money. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for everything you are doing. So, and thanks to everyone who's shared their memories in the chat. I'm sure you've seen some as they come up. We will compile them and share them back with the group. I will share a quick memory of my own, which is just sort of a strange one, but I think of it often. I got out of graduate school in 1978, before several of you were born, and I came to Philadelphia looking for my first job. I'm a New Yorker, but I wanted to move to Philadelphia. I won't go into all that, but I went to this big, kind of weird looking building on the Parkway that had a big United Way sign on it, and walked in to the front desk and said, do you have a list of agencies that you fund? And this was the olden days when they would hand you a paper list that looked like a magazine. And it had all these agencies. And I sat down in my apartment and wrote 50 some odd cover letters and resumes to all those places and got one job. But that was my first exposure to United Way in Philadelphia in 1978. So it's a little bit different now, but even then it was really helpful. So as we wrap up our evening, I'm going to suggest that that you grab a drink nearby, and we can toast. I'll hold up my. Oh, you can't see it. So I don't know. I don't understand these background things. Here is to everyone on this call and all the generous community leaders who have helped over all these years, for the bright future ahead, for the hard work of everybody on our staff and board and all of our other organizations. And thank you all individually for showing up every day the way you do to help the people in Philadelphia who need us most. So cheers. We will celebrate the 100th anniversary in person, come hell or high water. Let's hope. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, John and Bill and